following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Network, and it's time for Package Tourist with Matthew DiBiase.
Thanks, Ralph. Thank you, Ralph. This is Matt DiBiase, and we're doing another package tourist show. Matthew, I'm a package tourist in a magical mystery tour called Life, and tonight we're going to talk about basically my writing career, my thoughts about writing. You know, I'm a 3-time author, a sports historian, and I've been writing for most of my life, but only recently have I been published. And it's just been a long, slow learning experience, mastering my craft. First, writing song lyrics and poetry, and then developing, my ability to write prose. And then now, since 2015, I've published 3 works. And me and Ralph would like to talk about, the writing process, and offer some inspiration and advice and some guidance to those who are listening out there who have aspirations of being writers themselves. Is that right, Ralph?
Oh, absolutely. I am so enthused about this show, getting into your head, learning how you do it, and you are so eclectic and prolific. 3 books published in 1 year. I know they're the culmination of a lot of years of work, putting it together. And like you say, it's like giving birth to babies.
Yep.
And I am very envious of your production. What can I tell you? To be like Matthew, that would be nice.
Well, yeah, I don't know about being utterly like me because
no.
I mean, I don't know. I've had my ups and downs, Ralph. It's been a long, like late Jerry Garcia, may he rest in peace. It's been a long, strange trip for me, and
for me, so I can identify, and the fact that we ended up in the place that we're at now, it's almost a miracle in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
Besides the miracle of just being born. Who'd have thunk? Let's put it that way.
I'll put it this way. Writing saved my life, Ralph. It did. I mean, at first, when I started writing when I was the age of 17, and by that time, I was really going through a real rough period. And looking back at it all, to my mind, it was a way of it saved my life because it was a way for me to cope with my pain. I was just writing little poetry and song lyrics. I mean, when I look back at it all, it was very, very immature stuff and all that. But it was a way of expressing pain and anguish and coping with it because, the school system where I was going through was not a very good school system. And it's interesting, even though I am an author, I wasn't really grounded in like the classics. I wasn't really reading like, Milton or, Molière or, Herman Melville, stuff like that. I really had very precious little exposure to like the great classical authors. I mean, when I was
Who's the professor or teacher who inspired you most?
Oh, man. In terms of writing, do you want to know the truth, Ralph? No one, really. That's the truth. None of my teachers, like I said, my K through 12 years were not good ones, Ralph. And the school system I went to in Delray, New Jersey, was not exactly a very good one. So, in terms of inspiring me to like write and create, and actually there was no one. I think it came from my reading at home. I was self-taught. I mean, my parents were very bookish, so we had a little mini library of ourselves. There was a lot of history, so I was exposed to authors like Will and Ariel Durant, their 11 volumes, History of Civilization, Stephen Ambrose. I was reading like sports history books. Later on in college, I was reading Dave Halberstam. I always liked his books, like The Powers That Be, The Best and the Brightest. That was very influential.
Summer of '49 was the most incredible sports book ever written, except your books, Peter Golenbach, if you're listening. And, really tremendous writing. And he was taken early. Some student who was picking him up for a lecture at Stanford University ran into another vehicle, and tragically we lost him much too early.
Oh, I know. I've got a wide variety. I mean, I also got Halberstam's book, his book on the auto industry. Let's see. Also, that thing on the '64 Yankees and Cardinals. I got that book. I got a whole bunch of his books. Breaks of the Game. And you mentioned Peter Golenbach and giving a shout out. I like to give a shout out too, because guess what, Peter? His book Dynasty, Bronx Zoo. I got a whole bunch of Peter's books, and that was another major inspiration to me. His oral histories were very influential towards me and really got me going in my own, directions, talking to athletes, and creating books. So I like to give a shout out to Peter Golenbach. God love you, man. Thank you for inspiring me.
I don't know if you know, Matthew, but Peter and I do a weekly podcast and have for years on this network. And we talked last night about his newest venture. And I'm going to publish that podcast later in the week, and I'll send you a link to it. It was terrific. He's terrifically upbeat, and just as hasn't missed the beat. He and I are both 72 years old. And I'm just so delighted to have reached this age, and let alone to be able to communicate with people like you and Peter and Hal Bach and Al Blumkin and George Case and a myriad of different people on this network day in and day out. I'm blessed. I just wanted to tell you, and you add to the blessing, Matt.
Thank you, Ralph. That means a great deal to me. Thank you, and God bless you, man. And they were like early.
If she will.
I'll tell you, and I mean, I just started writing. First, it was poetry and song lyrics, mostly song lyrics, and then by the time I graduated from college, got my bachelor's degree, I became an op-ed columnist for my college newspaper when I started grad school, and that really helped me with my prose writing. So I started transitioning from like poetry and song lyrics to prose. I mean, that's when I got my first word processor. It's a pity when I was a kid they didn't have word processors. I think if they had existed back when I was a kid, I think my writing career really would have ignited back then. But I was still handwriting and basically typewriting. When I got my first word processor, that really opened me up, and that really helped me. It helped expand my voice. It gave me like a vehicle where I could really transmit and preserve my thoughts. And for like 2 whole years.
Very interesting question you bring up, the computer age.
Yeah.
All the accumulation of knowledge and what have you is offset by people not having socialization, except maybe Facebook or whatever, but with real life people on a day-to-day basis anymore. We've all got our noses in the computers, the devices, or this, that, and the other thing. It's a trade-off, the way I see it. The advances in technology can't be denied. They're going to keep us alive for a long time physically, and hopefully take care of the ecology. It's wonderful, but what's lost in lack of socialization with our fellow humans, you can't quantify that one way or the other. And
I know.
some sociologist will look back upon these times and maybe hear this podcast and be inspired to write something about, what did the computer go? You know, what was the effects? I'd be curious 50 years from now to see how things are.
I know.
It's probably not going to happen, and that's the number one frustration of all of us.
Yeah.
Is the fact that we're going to lose the game.
Yeah.
That,
you know, when I was doing my op-ed column writing, sorry, Ralph, frog in my throat. In a sense, I was sort of taught. I mean, my op-ed column, I would write about anything, mostly about politics, because back then I was doing like the '88, presidential campaign, Dukakis and the elder Bush and all of that, and the primaries and all of that. So in a sense, I was expounding on politics back then. Actually, I was doing my very young college age imitation of the late Walter Lippmann, who was, for those of you younger kids out there, he was the op-ed columnist from like the 1930s up to 1967. I mean, he was like, what George Will is today or David Broder, but he was the greatest political op-ed columnist of his time there. And I was trying to do my
New York Times.
Yeah. And also the Washington Newsweek and all of that. I mean, he was the voice. I mean, when he said something, people listened and all of that. And I was trying to do my little immature college boy imitation of it, but I would get feedback, Ralph. I mean, people say, "Oh, wow, that was a good column." I mean, one person, like, I did a piece on Malcolm X, and someone told me, said a friend, cut it out and actually put it on the thing of their barber shop or stuff like that. And I was also branching out. I was doing like contributing like the Camden Courier Post, sending little pieces there, and from time to time they would put it up. I would get exposure. So, I mean, it was like I was developing confidence, and it just kept building up, and then finally, I was starting getting new computers and all that, and the internet, and that was helping out. And then finally, I started working on my first book, which was never published. I abandoned it in the late 2000s. I was going to do an oral history about the original Six era in the NHL hockey. But after a while, after like 4 years of doing interviews, I decided to abandon the project, and then I transitioned and started working on my first book, which was released in 2015, which was Bench Bosses, the NHL's greatest coaches. And that was my first publication. And from there, that just opened up the floodgates. And then, 2 years after that, I did, The Art of the Dealers, the NHL's greatest managers. And now just, a month ago, my third book, Lords of the Gridiron, College Football's Greatest Coaches, was released. So in a sense, now that I've got, another helpful thing, Ralph, is the self-publishing industry. The fact that you've got platforms. In other words, it doesn't matter if I get rejected by the big boys. Now I've got this fallback here where no matter what, I'm going to get my material out. It's going to be out there, even if I'm not going to get the same type of sales as is with my first book. I got a regular publishing deal with Penguin Random House Canada. I'm still going to get my material out. So, I don't have to beg and plead.
Can self-published books become part of the Library of Congress?
Oh yeah. You get ISBN numbers and all of that. I mean, you just gotta work hard on flogging your books and all of that.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful. But by the same token, you having the responsibility of that alleviates a lot of frustration you may get if your book isn't handled properly, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Ralph, I could have gotten a regular publishing deal for my third book, Lords of the Gridiron, but there was a problem that got in the way. The manuscript is 300. The book is 350 pages. I had 2 or 3 feelers from conventional publishing firms, but they wanted me to cut the manuscript from 350 pages to 280 pages. And Ralph, that would have destroyed the whole thrust of my book, because I would have had to leave a lot of good, informative interview material where I was talking to the great coaches, Lou Holtz, Steve Spurrier, Tom Osborne, I would have had to leave that on the cutting room floor. And that's a thing that, for those of you who are writers, aspiring writers out there, that's a question you have to ask yourself. Can you cut, in this day and age, if a publishing firm asks you to cut, can you do it? Can you cut it down to their specifications? But if you feel that you can't do it, that if you do cut, you're literally compromising the intellectual integrity of the book, then I think maybe you need to do the self-publishing route if you are so determined to maintain the basic integrity of what it is you want to release and all that. And that's why I self-published Lords of the Gridiron, because I did not want to rape and gut, prime good information simply because a publishing firm wanted to do it on the cheap. And that was the motivation behind the cutting. They just didn't want to do the cost of a 350-page book. They wanted to do it cheaper for $280. And no, I'm not.
I never thought of their reasoning in that way. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Matthew, may I ask you this? I want to find out about your relationship with your editor. On your first book, they gave you an editor. Am I correct?
Yes. And you know what
was it like working with he or she? And was it a pleasant experience?
Oh, yes, it was quite pleasant. What surprised me was that my original manuscript for Bench Bosses was quite large. And I kept thinking, okay, once the editors they're gonna reduce it. They're gonna cut it down from a sequoia to a toothpick. I fully expected that, but no, they kept pretty much the most of it, and that surprised me. So that's why my first book, Ralph, is a very big read. It's like, oh my goodness, it was like I think Carl down to like 500 pages or something like that. It's very substantial, and that shocked me. But it was basically fine tuning. It wasn't really cutting out any significant chunks, Ralph. It was just, correcting grammar here, making sure your tenses agree, doing a little bit of fact checking here and there, a punctuation here or whatever, just tiny little things, and that really surprised me. But it was just
it was a pleasant working experience then.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes, it was beautiful. They were fantastic, my editors. A very calm and gentle hand and all that. I was surprised that they basically kept it intact. But
would you mention their names for posterity? Because this is going to be on YouTube for life.
Oh, wait a minute. I don't have their names with me right here. I think her name was. Oh no, she was the promotional agent, Ruta Lermonis. Goodness me, I don't have it with me right here, but
it'll come to you, and when it does, you can give her some mention, if not on this show, down the line.
Down the line. I don't have the copy with me. I should have thought about that. Sorry.
Well, you didn't expect the question.
The first editor was a guy. I think his last name was Taunton, something like that, Taunton. And then it was two ladies, and then he gave way to two ladies, or something like that. Whose names I forget right off the top of my head. But they were very good, very, very nice, very good, delicate touch and all that. It was had no problem whatsoever. So in a sense, I was blessed, very blessed with that. But for my second,
what is your writing experience like? Do you work at specific times? Do you make an appointment with yourself or do you write down ideas and then bring them together at the end of the day? How do you do it on a day-to-day basis?
I was working on Lords of the Gridiron, I had a specific discipline. Actually, with both books 2 and 3, The Art of the Dealers and Lords of the Gridiron, I would always say Sunday afternoon was my writing day. I would get my laptop out, drive over to New Jersey. There's a Starbucks there on Route 70, and from 1 o'clock to 3 p.m., 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. for 2 hours, I would simply start a chapter. I would just put the basics down. And by the end of 2 hours, I would have about 2.5 to 3 pages, down and all that. That's the first draft. and I would do for a year, and then what I would do is go back and then start fleshing out their early drafts, finishing up each chapter, and then I would be doing my book research, and I would insert quotes from various books in here, insert this book and footnote here, insert that bit, and then my interview material, I would then insert the interview material later on. This quotation goes here, that goes there, and then do the final polish, and then I would release. And for Lords of the Gridiron, I was doing 1 year of insertion of footnoting, quotations from other books, and then my interview material, and then from this past February up to literally the end of August, for almost 6 or 7 whole months, every single day I was editing 10 pages of typescripts a day, just constant editing. I went through 6 whole drafts of Lords of the Gridiron until finally what you see is the end result there. I mean, I never worked so hard in editing, self-editing a book in my entire life. I wish I had done the same for the second book, and all that. That was a bit more of a rush job, but it was just constant, reading and rereading and editing and revising. I mean, the first draft of Lords of the Gridiron is vastly different from the ultimate draft there. I did a lot of cutting there. It was from 390 all the way down to 350. And I felt I couldn't cut any more, without, really taking the guts out of the book. But it was a beautiful learning exercise. It really opened my eyes, in terms of, improving my craft, improving my prose and all that. It's very educational.
Okay, now, when a project ends, it can be devastating with literally nothing to do. In this case, you market the book, and it's a different world of getting the word out there.
Yeah.
But do you have another project in mind or at least in the back of your mind, that you'll be going to keep your streak alive?
Well, Ralph, don't laugh. The day I published Lords of the Gridiron, I also officially commenced my 4th book, which will be released exactly 3 years from now, Lords of the Gridiron Part 2, Pro Football's Greatest Coaches. I mean, when I was vacationing in Colorado a few weeks ago, I was fleshing out, starting drafts of certain chapters here, and I've already I've got 2 chapters down on 2 coaches that are be featured in the book, and next Sunday I'll be working on a 3rd chapter. So I've already kicked off.
And last week you had an interview with a fellow who played with Norm Van Brocklin.
That's right.
Chuck Bednarik on the 60 Eagles. And Chuck Bednarik would come up to my summer camp twice, 2 weekends a month, to give clinics and, hang with the kids. I got to know Chuck Bednarik as a kid in 1960, in that year. And you're blessed to interview, who was it? Was it a guy named Barnes? I forget.
Billy Ray Barnes, halfback.
Boy.
Yeah, starting halfback with the Eagles, in that 60 championship team. And then after his playing career ended, he worked with Norm Van Brocklin as an assistant coach at the Atlanta Falcons. And he lives in Landis, North Carolina now, which is kind of close to Charlotte. And he still, age 84, and he's still going strong, and hasn't lost the steam. It's interesting. You talk to, especially the older players. It's so interesting, talking to them, listening to their opinions and all that. I mean, I talked to guys like Clendon Thomas, who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the late 50s and early 60s. Frank Vericchione, he too played with the Steelers. He was an offensive lineman and all that, talking about old Buddy Parker, who coached the Steelers at the end of his career and all that. And I'm still working on other interviews. I send out letters and feelers. Haven't heard anything from anybody, but I'm always, I send some letters out, and hopefully I get some feedback. But when I get an interview, it's always a thrill, especially if it's
get
someone.
some referrals from Barnes. Who do you know?
He said old Ed Kayat, his old teammate, is still alive, so I just sent him a letter. Last Saturday I mailed him a letter. He's living out there in Tennessee someplace, and hopefully I hear from him. I'd like to hear about the Eagles' defense and all that. It'd be great, if I can talk to him. I sent a letter out to like Bobby Bell, E.J. Holla, but I haven't heard back from those guys. Maybe not. I mean, sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, but when I do, it's always a blessing. It's always great,
Matthew, the aforementioned Chuck Bednarik was the last two-way player in the NFL.
Yeah, old Billy Ray, he said Bednarik was better as a linebacker than as a center, the way he put it. He said he was much better, his defense was much better than his offense, when it came to playing, but he was a hero nonetheless.
And
a great hero.
Again, this was a time when the league wasn't as watered down. All leagues weren't as watered down as they are now. And it was right smack at the start of the golden age of football.
Ralph, back then, football rosters were only 33 men. Only 33 men. Now it's 53. I mean, that's how much it's expanded. I mean, imagine that. So you had to sort of be like two-way guys. I mean, you would have like offensive linemen kicking extra points or kicking field goals. You might have like a wide receiver like Max McGee.
Pat Summerall comes to mind of my old New York Giants. Who was a tackle and a field goal kicker, just as you say.
Yeah. It's like with the Colts.
Yeah, Larry was a safety, and he was a punter.
Yeah. I mean,
trying to think of some other. Oh, Lou the Toe Groza played offensive tackle.
Yeah, and he was a great one too. Yeah. Like Burt Reckishar, he was linebacker for the Colts, and for a time he held the record for the longest field goal ever, 56 yards, before Tom Dempsey broke it. But he did both. I mean, Jerry Kramer with the Packers was an offensive guard, but in the '62 NFL championship game, he kicked 3 field goals and an extra point, got 10 of the 16 points there. But he was an offensive guard as well. You had to be versatile. Paul Hornung was a running back. I mean, he set that record, 176 points, and was it 60 or 61? Which was astounding. Back then, so you had to be pretty versatile, doing the kicking and all of that. Van Brocken was a punter. He was a punter.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
I
did not remember that.
Yeah.
I know, here's one, not only versatile as to be a kicker and a punter.
Yeah.
How does that sound?
Yeah.
And Don Chandler was both a punter and a field goal kicker for the Giants. I think it was after Summerall retired, Chandler took over as the field goal kicker too, if memory serves, which it may not. I'm an old guy.
He was. First it was Summerall. Then when Summerall retired, Chandler did the punting and the place kicking, and then he got traded to the Green Bay Packers. And hey, he kicked 4 field goals in Super Bowl II. Don Chandler. Yeah.
Well,
and then retired at 67.
I didn't remember him as a Packer, but of course by that time I was a young adult, 65, 66, right?
Yeah.
I went into the Air Force in 65, so it was difficult to follow anything but baseball for me throughout life. But the memories of, like I say, the golden age of football will never leave me. Pray God. Yeah,
I'll tell you, publishing sports books is a dream come true, because when I was a kid, I was reading child, preteen, sports books and all that, great moments in football or baseball, and I love reading that, and you kind of wish I could do something like that. Now here I am, and I'm 56 years old, and I've got 3 sports books, and I hope in some way I can inspire some youth out there to become a writer and get involved in sports. I mean, that's why I always like talking to classes and all that. Like every February, I travel to Maryland, the greater Washington, D.C. area, because my cousin Julia, she's a school teacher, and she teaches like 5th graders, and I always talk to her class. I talk about my writing career and also about the presidents and all that, and it's always a thrill talking to kids and inspiring them. And once in a while you see one of them, they ask me questions. You can see they got that spark in them, and I hope in some way, in my own little way, I can inspire that spark. And hopefully when I'm talking to you now, Ralph, some kid is out there listening and they get inspired, and I say, don't be afraid. I say to those kids out there, don't be afraid. Put pen to paper, put your thoughts down, and don't be afraid to show it to the world, because that's the only way you can do it. You can't be afraid. You just got to lay it out there, and just let the world see it. And hopefully, the world likes it, and you get confidence and you build from there. I mean, but that's the one.
And don't be afraid of success.
Yeah.
More people are afraid of success than those who fear failure.
Yeah.
It's weird that way.
Yeah.
People will say, well, I failed, what the hell? But people fear becoming successful. They fear how the world will look at them, how their friends, their relatives will look at them. Am I worthy? Just because, all these psychological barriers that hold us back come into being every now and again. So kids, not only don't be afraid to fail, but don't be afraid to succeed.
Yeah. And
no better example of working your way through it than Matthew DiBiase. Thank you, my friend. Another great podcast. And what can I say? Have a great night, everybody. Thank you for listening. Any way you'd like to end it, Matthew?
Yep, well, stay tuned, because next Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ralph and I are going to talk about the Trump administration and my theory about government by conspiracy. So stay tuned. Next week, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Package Tourist
Show.
Keep
watching CNN as your glossary.
Yep.
Because things are changing so fast. It's October 1st. And how will it be next 7 more days? How will it be? That's good theater if ever I've seen it.
Yep. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too, Matthew. Thank you again for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.